Hi, it's Katrina.
Number 11. Queen Tiye. Ancient Egyptian Queen Tiye was the wife of Amenhotep III and the grandmother of King Tutankhamun. She was famous in the ancient world for being uncharacteristically strong-willed. She was also famous for her amazing hair. In the words of Egyptologist Zahi Hawass, Queen Tiye had the best hair in ancient Egypt. She reportedly spent a lot of time meticulously caring for her luscious locks, which were still intact thousands of years after her burial. Viewers were shocked to see this in 2021 when her mummy was paraded through the streets on its way from Cairo to its new home at the National Museum of Civilization in Fustat. Even more surprising was the fact that her mummy bore no signs of gray or white hair, despite the ruler having died at the age of 60. Queen Tiye shaved the front portion of her hair, which was a common symbol of power in ancient Egypt. It's believed that she dyed it with henna, which was also a popular practice at the time. When the queen died, the embalmers most likely gave her a fresh dye job. But how did she wash her hair? Before shampoo, ancient people had to use plants that contained natural saponins and mash it up in containers. To protect her hair from the arid climate, Queen Tiye probably used a moisturizer, most likely castor or almond oil, which she would have massaged into her scalp regularly. This made hair easier to style. Ancient Egyptians, just like today, also believed in the power of scalp massages and hair oil to promote growth. Like many other ancient Egyptian women, Tiye also owned several wigs and wore them often as a way to protect her natural hair from the sun and from lice. Hair extensions were also common and were typically either braided into a woman's hair or attached using beeswax and resins. But Queen Tiye's biggest secret to having fantastic hair was animal fat from everything to crocodiles, hippos, goats, and lions. In some cases, ancient Egyptians boiled animal blood with the fat with the belief that it helped darken grays. It may sound like a repulsive idea in the modern age. But back in the day, you had to use whatever was available, even if it was gross. But now, you don't have to. We've come a long way since ancient Egypt, and now thanks to geology, you can skip the animal fat. Geology is a 15-time award-winning personalized hair and skincare company recognized in Men's Health, Esquire, and Ask Men grooming awards. Geology creates simple and effective skincare and hair care routines customized just for you, with ingredients that are proven to work. Their products are built around just a handful of powerful, proven ingredients all in one place. No need to search for plants or waxes or fat to boil. Geology now has a new product called Co-Wash, which actually just won a GQ Grooming Award. More often than not, shampoo can damage your hair. That's where Queen Tiye had it right. She didn't use shampoo, and she had the best hair in ancient Egypt. Typical shampoos use harsh chemicals and sulfates to clean your hair. Co-Wash is a specially formulated cream cleanser that removes buildup and cleanses the hair without the big lather, harsh ingredients, or stripping hair of its natural oils. Good hair comes from having a healthy scalp, and Co-Wash focuses on cleansing and nourishing the scalp. All you have to do is take a 30-second diagnostic quiz to answer some basic questions about your hair goals. Their team of dermatologists will design a personalized routine just for you that is shipped directly to your door. It's that simple. Click the link below or head to geology.com and use code ORIGIN50 and take their free skin and hair diagnostic to get 50% off a skincare trial and 30% off the Co-Wash. Try both products for an unbelievable price. That's geologie.com or click on the link below to save 50% off on your 30-day skincare trial and 30% off the Co-Wash.
Number 10. Ancient Amputation. Evidence of a brutal amputation has been found in a limestone cave in Indonesia. On the island of Borneo, researchers from Griffith University came across the bones of someone who had been the victim of prehistoric surgery. 31,000 years ago, some Stone Age doctor performed a precision limb amputation on an unfortunate individual. The researchers were shocked to find that the person's remains were missing the left foot and lower leg. But here's the really interesting part. After the scientists examined the remains more closely, they were able to confirm bony growths that had formed during the healing process. The victim of the prehistoric surgery had lived long enough that his wounds healed. And so, even though it's pretty terrifying to think about this person having their leg cut in half in the darkness of a cave, it's also kind of miraculous. The ancient people living in the Borneo cave would have boasted impressive medicinal knowledge. They would have needed to know about the tropical plants they could use as anesthetic and antiseptic. They also would have had ointments to help the wound heal. But most impressive of all is that they had the anatomical knowledge to successfully pull off a full limb amputation. Number 9. The Tomb of the Priest. The creepy tomb of a priest from 3,000 years ago has been discovered at an archaeological site in Peru. The site is called Paco Pampa, and the tomb is little more than a shallow pit covered over by a heavy stone. The burial dates back to around 1000 BC, with the priest being around 35 years old when he died. But this was no ordinary priest. He was buried with great care, given treasures to take with him in death, and sealed tightly to prevent grave robbers from getting to him. Researchers believe he may have wielded extraordinary religious power while he was alive. He at least had some level of influence to be buried with such treasures like pututo, wind instruments made from seashells. Unfortunately, it's not exactly clear which culture this priest belonged to because he died about 100 years before the rise of the Chavin culture. That being said, we can only guess that he and his followers had similar gods, like the staff deity or the fanged jaguar god. Number 8. Polish vampire. At a cemetery in Poland, the skeletal remains of a female vampire have just been discovered by archaeologists this summer of 2022. Polish researchers came across the remains of a woman buried with a sickle tucked around her neck and a padlock around her foot. Her remains were found at an ancient gravesite in the village of Pien. Whoever buried her made sure that she would never rise from her grave ever again. If the sickle around the throat wasn't enough, the padlock around her foot would have surely kept her firmly in the ground. At least that's what the 17th century villagers thought. Magdalena Zagrodocka, a representative of the research team, said the woman was discovered wearing a silk headdress woven with gold thread. This has made for quite the mystery because it shows that the woman was of a high social status, and yet the other artifacts found in her grave clearly show the locals thought she was a vampire. Unfortunately, the experts have no idea who this woman was. She has no identity, so at the moment she's just a nameless vampire who died 400 years ago. The sickle around her throat was, in theory, supposed to cut her head off if she suddenly resurrected and tried to lift herself out of her grave. Number 7. Ripley's Mammoth Nipple. Ripley's Believe It or Not has come into the possession of a rather bizarre artifact. They now have on display 2 pieces of a preserved woolly mammoth that lived 49,000 years ago. The pieces of the mammoths were found in Siberia, uncovered in recent years as increased temperatures have caused glaciers to melt. The pieces of tissue were radiocarbon dated and confirmed as real and legitimate by the Kurt Engelhorn Center of Archaeometry. Ripley's now has a mammoth foot on display, as well as a huge piece of flesh with the mammoth's nipple on it. There is nothing overtly terrifying about a mammoth nipple, but it was a strange choice. If most museums could choose which part of the mammoth to keep, they would probably go for the skull and tusks. But Ripley's went in a totally different direction. Perhaps they were hoping to highlight the life of mother mammoths in nursery herds. Tens of thousands of years ago, in the cold and unforgiving tundra of Asia, Europe, and North America, mammoths roamed free. They used their huge tusks to dig through the snow and find buried shrubs and grasses. Mothers gave birth to a single calf at a time. They fed the baby until it developed teeth to feed like a grown-up. Mother mammoths also lived in large herds of about 15 individuals. These moms could live to be 75 years old, whereas male mammoths were typically forced out on their own and only lived to be around 40. Number 6. Game of Bones. In Israel, researchers recently uncovered an ancient game that was played using bones. The game is called astragaloi, and it was a favorite of the Greeks 2,300 years ago. Archaeologists have found examples of the game as far back as the Etruscans and other early civilizations. The gaming pieces are a little disturbing because they were fashioned from ankle or hock bones, normally from goat or sheep. The game was all about seeing into the future. The person playing would have rolled 5 bone pieces. They could roll them all at once or one at a time. It all depended on what the individual thought would give them the best glimpse into the future. Each bone piece was carved with a Greek god or goddess. There was Aphrodite to represent love and beauty, Hera to represent marriage and family, and Nike to represent victory. We can only assume that depending on which god the person rolled, whatever that god represented would be incorporated into the player's future. If they rolled an Aphrodite, they would be in store for some love. If they rolled Hades, death would surely be coming for them. But not all the rules to the game are clear. Some of the pieces have bizarre inscriptions on them. One says robber and another says you are burnt. This almost feels like an Uno situation, where perhaps another player is the robber and able to steal another's fortune for themselves. Would you want to play this game? Let me know in the comments below. Number 5. Animal slaughter. The Tartessos civilization lived in the southwest of Spain before the Roman Empire ever existed. And while there is very little known about this ancient civilization other than they mysteriously collapsed, researchers have made some recent headway. At an ancient building where the Tartessos practiced animal slaughter, archaeologists have found human remains. This bizarre new discovery could reveal more about the culture of these ancient people. The Tartessos flourished 2,500 years ago. They lived in Spain from between the 9th and 5th centuries BC. They were sophisticated, had advanced technology, and were supposedly rich. They traded with the Phoenicians and the Greeks, and after 500 years, found themselves being invaded by Celtic tribes. This was likely what led to their downfall. The recently excavated building was burned down at the very end of their civilization. It was built with an advanced kind of cement, something even the Romans would have been envious of. The structure was some kind of sanctuary, and it contained the remains of 30 animal skeletons. Most of these skeletons were horses, and they appeared to have been sacrificed. They were locked inside the building as it was lit on fire, and they all burned alive. But it's the human bones that have gotten archaeologists' attention. Someone was lying dead on the floor of the building and had been incinerated by the fire. The person was found near a door, and he had a spearhead lying beside him. The excavation team believed he was a watcher, standing guard so that nobody interrupted the sacrifice. But then, somehow, he himself got trapped inside and was burned alive with the horses. Number 4. Human teeth. When archaeologists found human teeth with holes drilled into them at the site of Çatalhöyük in Turkey, they weren't entirely sure what the teeth had been used for. They were 8,500 years old, left behind by Neolithic hunter-gatherers. In 2015, researchers identified the holes in the teeth as drill holes, then conducted microscopic and radiographic analysis. This confirmed what they had been thinking. The teeth were used as beads or pendants for somebody's necklace or bracelet. We were able to confirm this morbid theory because the drill used to punch a hole through the teeth left the same marks found on beads and animal bones also used as jewelry. Scott Haddow from the University of Copenhagen also said the teeth showed similar signs of wear as the other ornaments that Neolithic people wore. There is no disputing that these teeth were strung on a piece of jewelry, likely fashioned around some ancient person's neck. The final grisly fact about these teeth is that they had been taken from a mature person after death. Based on the tooth surfaces, whoever's mouth they came from died somewhere between 30 and 50 years old. Somebody had taken the teeth out of a corpse's mouth, then went through a lot of effort to string them into a necklace. I don't know, would you want to wear your ancestors' teeth? Or is that too morbid? Let me know in the comments below. Number 3. Disturbing burial pit. Before England was the financial center of the world, it was a conglomeration of medieval towns and villages with primitive settlements scattered across the country. That was the way it was for over 10,000 years. Some of those medieval towns are still around today, like the deserted village near Malton. It's one of the best preserved medieval villages in Britain, and also the most terrifying. Archaeologists have been excavating the place for over 60 years, trying to get a full understanding of what life was like in the Middle Ages. The mysterious village was occupied for at least 600 years. The first houses were built around the 9th century, and the whole place was abandoned near the beginning of the 16th century. Today, there isn't much left except the foundations of houses scattered across the grassy hills. In the 1960s, researchers unearthed the most ghastly part of the entire village. They found a burial pit containing over 100 human bones. At least 10 people were buried in it, according to researcher Dr. Rathmel. It was a disturbing find because this was a Christian town before it was abandoned in the 1520s. There was a church with a cemetery attached. Most people in the village should have been buried alongside their loved ones. So what's the deal with the burial pit? The truth is that nobody really knows. There is speculation that perhaps the bones could have been older, maybe from Roman times, but carbon dating showed them to be medieval. This small English village of God-fearing residents, for some unknown reason, massacred 10 people, broke their bones apart, and buried them in a hole that they thought would never be found.
Number 2. Creepy Egyptian mummies. A pair of photographs have been circling online that appear to show 2 very peculiar mummies. These mummified human remains, if they are human, look extraordinarily tiny. They look almost like baby mummies, except there is something wrong with their bodies. The very structure of their bodies doesn't exactly appear human. According to the source of the photographs, the mummies were originally discovered by Dr. Victor Lubeck, a retired professor from the University of Pennsylvania. He found the preserved Egyptian remains surrounded by unusual artifacts, things that you wouldn't typically expect to find in a tomb from ancient Egypt. The mummies were so creepy and the artifacts so bizarre that Egyptian authorities wanted to keep the whole thing a secret. Because, to be honest, the mummies look like tiny extraterrestrial beings. But the truth is that none of that is real at all. The photographs of the alleged alien mummies are in fact a pair of mummified baby girls found in the tomb of King Tutankhamun in 1922. The reason they look so much like aliens is because they were hardly more than fetuses when they were mummified. Researchers call them Mummy 317A and 317B, and believe they were probably the offspring of King Tutankhamun and his wife, Ankhesenamun.
Number 1. The Amber Spider. 99 million years ago, a spider was crawling up a tree with her baby spiders. It was just another day in the prehistoric world. But then, the arachnids got stuck in a patch of sticky tree resin, and they've been stuck in it ever since. The tree resin hardened and the spider and her babies were trapped, just like the mosquito from Jurassic Park. At first glance, it looks kind of terrifying. There is a small 8-legged monster with huge fangs, and its glob of tiny underlings frozen in a piece of amber. For arachnophobes, this is freaky, but for researchers, they say the solidified piece of amber showcases the maternal care that spiders have been giving their young ones for millions of years. That was when the first spiders appeared on the planet, during the Carboniferous period. The mother spider, stuck in amber, discovered in Myanmar, was from the Lagano-Megopidae family, which is completely extinct. Spiders have been around for a very long time, and haven't really changed much since they first evolved. Thanks for watching! Which of these scary archaeological discoveries did you find the most fascinating? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. See you soon. Bye!